Thanks a lot, Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia. Thanks all.
Bye. Hi, Richard. How are you?
Hi, Sophia. So first of all, can you see me and can you hear me? I've been having some technical issues I've been trying to work out. So
We can do all of the above. Happy to have you.
all right. Perfect.
All right. So, so Richard, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself, but we are going to be talking about how to effectively engage customers, audience members, users, whatever that may be. But in this standpoint, in this context, from a brand perspective. But go ahead, Richard. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Richard Ward. As with almost everybody in the world today, I wear more than one hat. For the last few years, I've been with McKinsey & Company as the head of Metaverse. But one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I'm one of the co-founders of Ready Player Golf, which is the largest and first charity event in the Metaverse. We're actually going up to Ready Player Golf 3. That'll be the day after Thanksgiving. And what we do is we bring hundreds of people together. We do some activities. We actually go play a little bit of video golf, VR golf, come back, have a big award show and all these things, and we raise money for charities. And this year we're actually raising money for the Children's Cancer Research Fund, which does a lot of incredible work with kids with VR in hospitals and things of that nature. So a great group of people. We're happy to support them, and that's kind of one of the things that I'm doing.
Yeah, and by the way, Ready Player Golf registration for the third iteration of this tournament is live on the website, so readyplayergolf.com. We hope to see everybody there. I'll definitely be there on the sidelines helping out. But I want to talk about the fruition of this idea, of this initiative, because a couple years ago at the start of the pandemic, you realized that we no longer had the opportunity for casual professional networking that was offered through in-person industry events. So you wanted to recreate that through hosting this golf outing in VR. Let's go back into the vision for this and how it all came together.
Yeah, so obviously, the pandemic happened and we all spent a lot of time on Zoom, where for argument's sake, we've all become like local access cable TV personalities, and the thing for that I noticed about it was that the difference between what we're doing now, as well as the difference between like when people play games on their phones or they do things like that, and what is available through this particular set of equipment, I kind of boil it down to two things. One of which is motion. So when you're playing a game or when you're on Zoom, when I turn my head to the side like this, or when I move my hands like this, it has no effect on the computing system. It has no effect on the state of the models. It has no effect on anything. It has no effect for you, right? As the viewer, I mean, other than you can see that I'm not looking, whatever. But for me personally, I turn my head around, the compute environment doesn't change. It doesn't really give me any new information. So I think one of the key things about this sort of like, VR-based thing that's happening is that motion impacts the compute environment in a way that we've never had before. Because if you think about it, like previously, what we got right now is moving your thumbs or swiping a finger left and right is basically most of your motion on hand, smartphones, and then moving this thing around and maybe some arrow keys. That's the most motion that you use from a kind of traditional desktop, laptop computing environment. And so I think that's one of the most exciting things about this. The second thing about this, which we have seen in the early days, and I think actually is going to be a bit of a breakthrough and is the unexpected part for this Cambria Quest Pro, is e-motion. So, if you go through like texting, I mean, the classic thing is, of course, you can't tell jokes on texting because people always take it the wrong way. And, email miscommunications and all of that. And then you move to sort of this video conferencing capability where certainly a certain more bandwidth of emotion comes out. But let's say if there was 7 of us on here, you never really would know who's making eye contact with whom, or who's following the conversation and who's paying attention and those things. And I think what's going to happen is that with the eye tracking and face tracking the next generation is going to provide, you actually will expanding the emotional bandwidth that will be able to be transmitted between people that are in completely different places in the world. But through this electronic media, they will you'll be able to actually broadcast and you'll understand human emotion and, and micro emotions and aggressions and all that kind of stuff at a lower level. And you combine it with kind of like the physicality of what you can do in terms of physical motion, and you kind of bring this whole thing together. And I think we're really in a new generation of things to happen. And, if it won't surprise you, I'm a fundamentalist who believes you cannot spell metaverse VR, right? And so I think that that's a really core, important part of this. And so then you get to these questions about, well, what makes for a VR experience and what makes for a really bad one? And this is where I kind of came upon an insight that I call Richards per minute. And I jokingly say, why not, right? Newton got to name the Newton and Volta got to name the Volta. Why can't I name my own thing? And what it really is that when people are in a VR experience, you can measure how much do they move heads by, let's say, a couple of degrees. Do they move their hands, push a button, move an arm? You can measure these things. And if you get sort of like 1 point for each one of these things, you end up with the number of Richards or reactions per minute. And what my research is showing, generally speaking, is that when the number of Richards or reactions per minute gets below about 20 for participants, they start to really bored with the experience. They start to notice how heavy the headset is. They start to notice how sweaty things are and those sorts of things. So what you need activities in which all of the participants are doing something at a high level of a moderate level of activity, which is why one of the use cases that everybody keeps promoting for VR and the metaverse, which is, let's have a meeting where I can blah, blah, blah in front of a PowerPoint and you sit in your seat and be quiet because I'm the boss, has got really low RPMs and people hate it. They just absolutely hate it. They refuse to do it after more than once, So you get into these situations of trying to figure out what kind of activities work really well for people. And one that works really well for people is getting people together to have a group conversation about something and then go do an activity like play golf together. That has got really high RPMs and people love it. So that's kind of like my thing.
So the need for engaging an audience can be for many different reasons. And talk about some of the similarities in how an audience is engaged with like an initiative like Ready Player Golf and how other brands would similarly engage with audiences like that in immersive settings. Like what are the similarities between what you're doing in Ready Player Golf and how a brand would engage with their audience?
Yeah, I think one of the key lessons for a brand is looking at stuff and watching stuff in the metaverse is boring, right? It really, because of course, one of the things that, especially if you're focusing on like, headset based thing, is that when people get bored, they start wanting to pop the headset up to check on their email and stuff like that. And so, which they can't really do that, which is, so people get very frustrated. So the thing that I would recommend for brands is keep the RPMs up. And if you want to have 1 million people or 20 million people come through your experience, realize you need to give them stuff to do, not see. And so, for example, one of these the things that people spend a lot of time talking about is, virtual concerts. It's like, okay, if what you're expecting me to do is to teleport into a place and stay basically in one place and watch somebody else on stage, it's not going to be that great of an experience. Now, if you've got it where everybody's dancing, yeah, that's great, right? But also I've seen experiences where people have combined things together where, for example, you're like playing a game, a mini game, if you will, while the concert is going on all around you. And so you kind of get that dual benefit of, imagine, to make something up, imagine you were playing Beat Saber while a 3D hologram of Billie Eilish is doing a live performance of a song, that kind of a thing. You get that sort of benefits of watching what's going on, doing something and having activity levels and those things. And I think that's going to be one of the key things or the key lessons that is going to come out of this next generation of brand activations inside the metaverse, is this recognition that if people don't have something to do, they're mostly just looking at stuff and they get bored with it pretty quick, and then they're not that engaged.
Yeah, I did notice in some of the concerts that BRCVR put on within their Burning Man environment in the playa. That is what they did. They had the hula hoops there that you could jump in. They had the fire throwers and things like that, things to engage you, but also you with your peers and do stuff while you're, in a cool environment. I've also noticed that we're at the time where, like, you know, prior to 2022, it was all about graphic fidelity and how beautiful the environment was. And that used to be good enough. And now we're at the point where that's not good enough anymore. We need the Richards per minute and the RPMs and all these engagement tactics within these experiences, which is a good sign, because that means that there's, more exploration and investments and innovations going on within these mediums, right?
Well, in fact, I would even say it's the going for higher resolution and fidelity and all that stuff is a cop out. It's the easy thing to focus on rather than coming up with something interesting and entertaining for people to do. Because I think you could run a fairly low poly, low resolution concert or other activity for lots of people as a brand, as long as people have something to do and they could love it. They could be like, this was fabulous. I had a great time. I got the brand. And a good example, actually, quite honestly, not truly, and let me be clear, this is not meant to be a shill, it's just an example. The folks at the Children's Cancer Research Foundation do a thing where they bring kids in to a situation where they actually get to, on their own, design their own sneakers, and then they site, and then they put it all in, and Nike custom builds these sneakers for them. And I got to tell you, the resolution, the functionality thing, everybody would complain about it. This is like, it's not AAA, blah blah. Tell you what, kids love it. Kids have a great time. They're doing activities, and there's real world outcome to the whole thing. That,
yep.
Quite honestly, that I would say is better than most quote metaverse concerts, which are really MTV videos replayed over and over. Versus that, it's like those kids had a great time. The engagement was there. They were doing something meaningful, and they had a great time. It had nothing to do with the video fidelity.
Yeah. Well, it's serving a purpose, and that is the reason that we all strive to in the applications that we're building. It has to serve a purpose for people to actually go in and on multiple occasions to experience. So readyplayergolf.com, come to the event. It's going to be a good time for XR industry professionals and beyond, for a good cause. So thank you, Richard, for joining us today.
You're welcome, and please join us. It's for a good cause, and I guarantee high Richards per minute. If nothing else, I'll be there. So anyway,
yes,
thanks a lot.
True.
Thanks a lot. Good luck, everybody. I'll see you later.